So last year I made a video about lighting techniques that are commonly used on large sets and big productions that you yourself can do at home and on your own low budget productions. And what I want to do today is flesh out one of those techniques because I really do believe that this can be one of the most powerful tools to have in your back pocket as a cinematographer. There are thousands of different ways you can implement it, but it's one of those things where when it's done correctly, it almost feels like a cheat code to instantly make your footage look more like a movie. But before we get into it, I want to just quickly go over what it is that makes a light source soft, because this is something that a lot of people on YouTube, I think, just get wrong or don't fully understand. Do me a favor and go to the nearest lamp you have in your home, take the lampshade off, and turn it on. Place your finger near your palm and then put your hand so that the light bulb is casting the shadow of your finger onto your palm. Now bring your finger and your palm right up next to the light bulb and then start moving them backwards while paying attention to the shadow on your palm. You'll notice that when your finger is right next to the bulb, the shadow in your palm is soft, but as you move further away from the bulb, that shadow is going to become harder. This is because the softness of the light is going to be based on the size of the source in relation to the size of the subject. When your finger is right next to the light bulb, it is a bigger source because it's bigger than your finger, but as you move further away, it becomes smaller and smaller, and therefore it becomes a harder source. Think about the sun. When you go outside on a bright sunny day, the shadows that you're going to get from sunlight are going to be sharp and crisp. The sun is this enormous, massive, gigantic star that is 109 times the size of Earth, but because it's 93 million miles away, it appears as this tiny little dot in the sky. The sun is huge, but it appears very small in relation to us, so that's why the quality of light it produces is hard. If I was to put a 4-foot softbox 1 foot away from me, the quality of light I'm going to get from that source is going to be soft. But if I take that same 4-foot softbox and I move it 10 feet away, that quality is now going to be a lot harder. This is also why people bounce lights off of walls, because when you turn a light into a wall, you're now turning that entire wall where the light is hitting into its own light source. Now you have a bigger source and you have softer light. A lot of lighting is just physics and math, but having a strong understanding of things like the size of the source to the size of the subject and inverse square law, these are the keys that are going to help you create believable and beautiful lighting. And the inverse square law is something that you should definitely know as a cinematographer because it is the key to achieving realistic and believable fall off in your lighting, but that is something that needs an entire video on its own. So today we're just going to talk about the size of the source to the size of the subject. Now, before we go on to the next stuff, I want to talk real quick about the sponsor of today's video, Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound is the go-to all-in-one platform for music and sound effects with a library of over 50,000 songs and 200,000 sound effects, all rights included, so you don't have to worry about any of those copyright strikes. They also offer you a unique plugin that you can use in whatever software it is you use to edit, so you can search songs, download them, import them, throw them right into the timeline without ever having to tab out of your software. They also offer super unique sound tracking tools that can do things like analyze your footage and recommend music based on it. So maybe you have footage of a guy, searching through a creepy, spooky looking house. Well, here's some spooky music. Maybe you found a song you really like on Spotify, but you obviously can't use that. So just paste the link into their plugin and Epidemic Sound will find you a bunch of songs that match it in mood, tone, sound, genre, all that stuff. These sound tracking tools go a great way to help streamline the process of finding music. It's one of my least favorite parts of editing. I don't know if you've noticed, but I kind of stopped using music in my videos altogether because I couldn't stand it. Epidemic Sound has made things a lot less tedious, a lot simpler, a lot faster, and their plugin, most importantly, allows you to stay within the flow of editing by never having to even leave your software, which I think is awesome. It's really improved my workflow. I use it and I like it, and honestly, that's pretty much all it takes for me to want to recommend it. So if you're feeling inspired or you've got some sort of story you want to tell, go ahead, check out Epidemic Sound. They've got you covered. Click on the link down in the description below or use code Mitch50 to get 30 days free and 50% off of 2 months of any plan. It also greatly helps out the channel. I appreciate it. Thank you for Epidemic Sound for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back to the lighting. Let's go ahead and get into that lighting technique that I mentioned earlier, and that is soft top light. Top lighting is something that can be done in so many different ways, but when it's done correctly, it is something that can be very flattering, very cinematic, and just very easy to do. You'll see it used in movies and TV all the time because it is a very versatile lighting setup. After all, in your day-to-day, when you're out in the real world walking around, a lot of the times light is coming from above us. It's just usually not that flattering. There were actually plenty of sound stages that I would see in LA all the time where you could rent them for very cheap, and they would all have big 12-foot softboxes rigged up in the ceiling in the studios. And the reason why is because all you'd need to do is just flip a switch and boom, instant beautiful footage. This last week, I drove down to Pennsylvania to shoot a short film with a friend of mine, and we had absolutely no money for it. I'm talking this was just the 6 of us scrapping together a short film that we shot in 8 hours, and It was all in a friend's cabin. The only money we spent was on food, gas, and water. Now, my friend did own the lighting package, so we didn't have to rent anything, but I will be doing a breakdown of what it would have cost if you were to rent what we had, because it was still incredibly cheap. This was a very affordable shoot. This is stuff that anybody could get their hands on. For this shoot, our lighting package was an Aperture 600C with a projector lens, an Amaran F22X, which I will be referring to as a light mat for the rest of this video. We had a 4x4 floppy, and we had a 4x4 frame of muslin. And this entire shoot was lit using basically two lighting setups. That was either the light mat going through the muslin directly overhead, or we had the muslin overhead and we were shooting the 600C into that to create a top light. So essentially two different ways of top lighting. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple shots from this film and how they were lit. For this bedroom scene, we put the light mat over top of Talent and we shot it through a 4x4 frame of muslin. Now, if I had something like a 6x6 frame of diffusion, I probably would have used that. If the goal is to get a softer light, then using a bigger source would be ideal. But we didn't really have a lot of space in this room and we only had a 4x4 of muslin. So we just ended up using that. And what we did was we lowered that muslin until it was just out of frame and got it as close to Talent as possible, because that was increasing the size of the source, which gave us a really nice soft light. From there, it was just about adjusting the levels to taste. I believe the light was at 3000 Kelvin, and it might have been around 90 to 100% because that muslin was taking off a lot of intensity. The only other light we ended up using was the 600C outside the door in the background. No dome, just bare cob, and we're using that to separate the male lead from the background as well as give a nice edge light to her cheek and her shoulder. We ended up doing this match cut where it jumped later into the night, so we wanted to switch to a moonlight look. We raised the light mat and the muslin up about maybe 3 feet, and then we just changed the color temperature and the intensity. We changed it to around 6000 Kelvin to get more of a blue moonlight look, and we dropped the intensity down to 15% because actual moonlight is really dim. It shouldn't be super bright. Same lighting setup using top light, but completely different look. For this scene in the living room, it was the exact same setup as the bedroom. It was the light mat over top going through the 4x4 frame of muslin. This shot, and this shot were all using the exact same lighting setup, with the only difference being that we moved the light around a little bit for shape. And that is one of the best things about using top light this way. Depending on where you put that light source, you can achieve a few different looks from it. When you have the light directly over top of Talent, the light can struggle to dig into the actor's face. You end up getting those shadows under the eyes that everybody calls raccoon eyes. It's not really the most flattering thing, but if you move the Talent backwards and put the light so that it's more in front of them, it's gonna dig more under the eyes and you're gonna get a softer, more even look. This is also true for the opposite. If you were to move that top light further away so that it's behind Talent, you're going to get a more moody upstage look while still keeping that soft toppy quality. This was our approach for this scene in the film, where we placed that 4x4 muslin overhead, but we placed it so that it was more behind them. We then shot the 600C into that muslin using a projector lens to create that soft overhead light that acted more as an edge while keeping that really soft quality, which you can see by how the light is wrapping from chin to cheek. Now, like I said, this was a really low budget film. This was something that anybody could do. If you were to rent the equipment that we used for this shoot for, say, a 3-day weekend, it would cost you roughly around $150 to $200 depending on where you are. And I promise you that you could go to Home Depot and get one of those can lights and shoot that through a muslin frame, or get one of those $25 impact lights with like a photography umbrella. You can create the same soft top light with those cheap pieces of gear easily. If you can make beautiful shots using cheap lighting equipment like that, then you can absolutely scale that up to more expensive lighting setups. At the end of the day, it's all about the technique, and that technique will be the same. I mean, after all, in my last video, I literally talked about taping trash bags to the ceiling and shooting a light into that to create an overhead softbox, and it doesn't get cheaper than that. That's just one specific example of how you can get that kind of light. This light above me right now is just another way to do it. There's so many different ways to do it. I actually know a DP who went from shooting spec commercials with his friends to shooting The Weeknd and Cardi B and Doechii, all by just constantly top lighting everything he shot. But it looked really good and people loved it and they wanted more of it. So if you understand the tools, if you understand the technique, you can get a lot out of this lighting setup. So go get some lights out, start practicing, and it's a good thing to know.